welcome to Chapter Select, the book club for video games. With you, as always, myself, Jens, and my good friend, Randy as well.
Hey,
Randy.
We made it through Cyberpunk. Well, I did. You did it before we recorded the first episode.
Randy, Cyberpunk for me is but a distant memory. It has been pretty much wiped out by playing nothing but Demon's Souls since I finished Cyberpunk, and that has been taking my brain over completely.
That's okay. I finished Cyberpunk the day we're recording this, and it is but a distant memory. And but
are you eager to forget? Is this like being in the French Foreign Legion?
Yes, I'm done. I wanted it to be done.
Uh-huh.
The final chapter is so disappointing, and not on a story level, but a technical level, and we'll get into it. But first, I got to ask you, Jens. You've been playing Demon's Souls. You've been playing anything else?
I did play one thing that is thematically connected. I've been playing some other Cyberpunk-related stuff. And the one that I liked the most of that I'm going to talk about is a game called Hypnospace Outlaw. It's distributed by No More Robots, who also... I think they're it's like multiple development houses, but it seems like they're all kind of doing the same style of game. So No More Robots is also attached to Yes, Your Grace, which you've heard me praise. So I saw that there was another one of their things on Game Pass, and that was Hypnospace Outlaw. And what it is, it's another adventure game, and it's a little cyberpunky, but in a different way than you'd expect. It is an internet simulator where you are a mod. So the whole game is played on like a desktop with a browser and a bunch of applications that you're running. And you're a moderator who has to investigate complaints. So you get a complaint, for instance, about bullying or copyright infringement or something. And then you need to log into the internet and you need to follow up on those complaints. And you need to identify people and flag them. So you're flagging offensive content and stuff like that. But the interesting thing is, of course, it's a fictionalized internet. It's a game that takes place at the turn of the century. So it's set on December 1999. And the internet in this story is a VR internet. So people do connect to it via a headset that plugs into their brain. But for some reason, it's still like a browser. That looks like a 90s browser with your animated GIFs and bad fonts and all that stuff. And the old MySpace thing of every website you're going to having a custom sound sample that's playing nonstop. That game actually has a really cool soundtrack just by way of music playing in the background of different websites. So yeah, that's the concept. But then it has a really neat story that's all about halfway through the game. All these infractions that you've been following up, and everything kind of builds to a big tragedy that happens on New Year's Eve. At the turn of the millennium, there is a bad event that happens. And then the game flashes forward in time to the far future, where now you are looking through essentially the Internet Archive, and you're, investigating what happened, being a anthropologist sifting through things many years after the fact. And it's really great. If you like this sort of thing, if you like adventure games or investigative games, if you like stuff like Papers, Please, or Yes, Your Grace, I think it's a great one in that genre. And did a good job of telling a cyberpunk kind of story. A story about a corporation causing a bad thing to happen and holding people to account, and the little guy fighting back against systemic forces. All those themes that are kind of inherent to cyberpunk as a genre are certainly reflected in Hypnospace Outlaw. Would have been a great one for the podcast, but it's just a game that I picked up randomly and tried out and then played through it on the weekend, Mm-hmm. But mostly it's been Souls, and I actually just killed King Alland last night, which was nerve-wracking, and he stole two damn Souls levels from me. That is the most brutal thing I think any boss has ever done to me, is what that final boss in Demon's Souls does. It's just literally suck your levels out of you.
That's actually a pretty cool concept, I think.
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. But, you take your lumps, and he's dead.
There have been RPGs that I've played where you can get status effects that'll knock you down 5 levels or whatever, but to just take it away completely, I don't know if I've played a game like that. That's actually really interesting. It's
crazy. But yeah, he's the final boss, and I've just now got the 5th Archstone to clear, which are lesser bosses that are weak to fire, and I've got a good fire sword, so that should not be an issue. So I figure I'm a couple hours away from being done with Demon's Souls. That game is still amazing. That is still an incredible game. I freaking love the remasters. I have made complete peace with anything they've done as far as creative changes. I think it's like 98% amazing as far as the restyling. And I love looking at it, and I love being in that world, and I'm going to be sad when I'm done with it. So, looking for similar games to fill the void. There are always
Souls-likes out there to fill whatever void you can get.
Fallen Order just got a 60 frame patch, so I think it's the right time. They just got the next gen patch, so I think that should be one.
I have it downloaded on my Xbox because it was on Game Pass. I was tempted to still spend the $30 or whatever it was on the PlayStation Holiday Store or sale, but I stayed back and went, no, I'll play it for free.
Yeah, as long as the EA deal is in place, you'll have access to it, so it'll be fine. How about you, man? You've just been cyberpunking, right?
I'm not, actually. I got to the point in Cyberpunk where I felt like I was pretty close to the end, and then we had a scheduling snafu, which actually gave me an extra week, which I was cool with, and so I did some side quests and stuff there, but it also gave me a chance. I played more Super Meat Boy Forever, which I'm getting ready to write the review for W2M here soon. I was going to do the outline today. I still have some cleanup work to do in that game, but I have died so many times that I'm over 2,000 deaths, I'm pretty sure, and it's mostly from the bosses. The bosses are the best part of that game. I'm still a little disappointed with the routes that they took as far as making it an auto-scroller and making it procedurally generated instead of...
neither of those two things are remotely appealing to me. I have not
started a new game. That's one of the things I want to do before I write the review is start a new game and then go back and play like the first 3 levels on my original save and then go in the new game and play those first 3 levels just to see how different they are. But you don't really see any kind of a difference other than it doesn't feel like it's been given that polish and love that Super Meat Boy does, which is, of course, you can't with procedurally generated stuff. But I do understand what they were trying to go with when they first went down this path, because this was just supposed to be the mobile game. This was supposed to be a side thing. And it kind of took on a life of its own. And so now, at least it's finally out, and hopefully they can focus on Super Meat Boy 2. And go back to that. But it's fine. It's an enjoyable experience if you like it. It's just nowhere near what Super Meat Boy was. And it's because of those decisions. I've also gotten a couple hours into Maneater. I picked that up. It was on the PlayStation Plus deal.
You are deeper than me in that now. I got kind of stuck in an early level where I couldn't figure out what to do next.
I think I'm in the 3rd section of the game. But it's fun.
What you think, sir?
The controls are a little wonky, but that's been water levels for me always. So some of the fights can be a little irritating. But I love the atmosphere they create, and that like you're basically playing a Deadliest Catch episode, and they have it's airing on Sundays at 8 or whatever in the corner when they talk to the big fisherman guy. So I like the humor in it. It's one of those games that I will probably play off and on for the next month or so. I'm never going to focus on it, and it'll always be the background game, but it's one that, like the Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 or whatever, that is just, I got 20 minutes. I'll go collect this or that or whatever, but it's fun.
Yeah, well, I've played of it, again, until the point where I was like, what am I supposed to do? Maybe I was just being dumb. I need to get back into it.
Those kind of games happen now. I have gotten to many points where... the quest will say it's over here, and I'm like, how the fuck? How do I get here? Or I've been platooned on a island and tried to figure out where'd the water go, just the way the graphics looked, and it was dark, and so it was like it all looked the same. So my shark is just flopping around everywhere. But
yeah, marooned.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I need to get back into that. Especially the last time I played it was before next gen, so I've heard that they've done quite the graphical update to it. So I'm curious to see that.
Yeah, that's a good.
Does it look nice?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play the PS4 version, but the game definitely looks good and plays pretty well. So I'm definitely happy with deciding to give this one a shot. And then
Very cool.
by the time this comes out, we will have played some Scott Pilgrim together.
That's true. Playing that tonight. It came out. Yep.
So excited. Did you ever play the original?
I love that game. Yes, okay. You could look at my Xbox profile. You'll see I have all the achievements.
I doubt I did, but because back when I played Xbox more, I wasn't really into achievements or trophies. That was more of a PlayStation thing. And then since I became refocused on the PlayStation, my Xbox, as you've seen when you added me on the Xbox, my gamer score is pretty weak.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's okay. We're all indifferent. My gamer score was like I've been so dwarfed by other people because they stayed on Xbox for the last generation, whereas I played maybe a dozen games on Xbox last generation altogether.
Right.
So I was ahead of a lot of people in my friends list for a long time, and then now I'm behind by at least 100K.
Still happy to say that I am in first place of my friends list on PlayStation.
Yeah, you've got higher score than me on PlayStation. You've got way more platinums for one. I've only got like 6 or 7 platinums.
I try to platinum more. There's some pretty cheap platinums in there. I will not lie, but there are some good ones in there as well. But this is a game, Cyberpunk, not a game that I'll be platinuming or completing on Xbox anytime soon. I'm done with it. Absolutely done with it.
I've got about 525 points, I think. So I consider that like over 50% total completion. I consider that acceptable to put a bow on.
Honestly, don't even know what I'm at. I never looked. Well, because I knew this isn't my kind of game, and we'll get into it in a second. So I really didn't see me ever trying to 100% it at all. And then hearing the horror stories of quests getting glitched out completely and being unable to finish it is like, no, thank you. And I've dealt with a lot of that kind of stuff, especially in the end game. So Plus, it'll give us an excuse to play it again when the next gen patch is out. I will not be on that show. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't like it because of the glitches or the frame rate or whatever. And I haven't had until the last couple hours of this game. I didn't have too many issues with that kind of stuff. I just don't find this game entertaining or interesting. I find it to be a generic open world experience that people just blew up into these insane expectations, which I tried not to get to anyways. I'm just not an open world person anyways. I find them, and I have the same complaints with this game. I find it impossible to have a great story when you play out a game like this.
Why? Is it just the distractions?
No, it's not just a distraction, but the pacing will never work. And I think maybe that's why I would have never gotten into The Witcher 3, is because that's all I've ever heard is, the side quests feel like main quests. Well, then make them a fucking main quest, because I'm going to do them in a different order than the developer wanted them to be. So you're going to have conversations with people that are going to feel completely different than when you see them in a different part in the main quest. And that happens here, especially in Cyberpunk, with you because you and Johnny are always with each other, obviously. So I'm doing side quests with Pan Am, and Johnny and I are having this one kind of interaction, and then I go do a main quest, and Johnny and I are acting completely different.
This is a big problem with having this one character along with you the entire time, and in the side quests. And I can see why you might have a problem with it. I personally really appreciate that Johnny is not just a presence in the main story. Like, I really like that he will weigh in, even on what seem like totally inconsequential side quests at first. Suddenly Johnny will be a big part of them, or at least will have an opinion. And I like that. There have occasionally been times, like you say, where you're in a side quest and Johnny will talk to you, and it'll be more antagonistic than it should be based on how your story with him has progressed. So it'll be the Johnny from like 5 hours ago instead of the Johnny from now, which is, I think, what you're getting at. Because that character dynamic, again, one of the strengths of the game is that character dynamic between Johnny and V, and how it develops over time. But it does mean that, the relationship is vastly different by the time that you're in the third act.
And I will say that Johnny did grow on me. I enjoyed that character. I didn't really at the beginning. I was like, whatever. It's Keanu Reeves and everyone's just blowing smoke and It's just a generic character. But no, that character especially grew on me. I enjoyed the interactions. My issue is V. It's impossible to get invested in that character because he's not a character.
I mean, I quite like the voice actress for female V. What? I think she does a good job selling V as just kind of a good-natured person who wants to be the best, wants to be the legend of Night City, got her group of friends, gets in over her head, has this, dude in her brain now and is trying to deal with it as best she can. And I think that in relationships, like whether it's, I played a woman, so you can only have a friendship with Panam. So in my friendship with Panam and in my love story with Judy, I thought that V was, not the most like thoroughly drawn character, but very likable.
I just found it completely bland. And it's because you can't create that connection with them. And this is just a completely side thing and not one of the reasons why I didn't get into V. This is why I don't like open world, open choices. Because they always, this game does it too, and I know a lot of others do it. But they'll give you all these options, and there'll be one line that just sounds awesome. And you click it, and it's said completely different. I'm like, no, I wanted that singer. Why didn't you just write out what she was going or he was going to say? Don't just give me the idea, or just say insult, threat.
Yeah, that'd be if you don't want to spoil. Right, you don't want to spoil what the dialogue is. You don't want to spoil the voice acting before you say it. That's why. But yeah, that's always a fine needle to thread as to how much of an indication are you giving the player of what you're about to say.
I won't get into the ending, obviously, just yet. But I will say the ending of my playthrough made me more upset with Cyberpunk as a whole. Because on my playthrough, and I don't know if it works on all the other different endings and stuff, but on my ending, I have a scene with me and the character that I finished with having a conversation, and it popped out to third person. And you see V have emotions and thoughts. And I'm like, this is what I said in the first part. This is what I wanted. Like, if you want me to be invested in V, then you have to let me see V have emotions. All of these conversations and dialogues felt so robotic to me because that's how first person always works.
No, but you're supposed to be. You're V. That's the whole idea.
I'm just not into that stuff. That's not me.
Why do you need to see your facial expressions in order to have an emotional investment?
I mean, how do you get an emotional investment on a character that's just you?
But then, okay, but the whole point of a first-person role-playing game...
But we're talking, this conversation is so difficult anyways, because we can't say V's a good character if V is you. Well,
but if you're saying you can't infer that stuff from voice acting and context and
it comes out completely robotic.
Dialogue?
It comes robotic and bland to me when it comes out like that.
This is like, I always chuckle when people complain about the fact, like when The Mandalorian first came out, I saw a lot of people who said, like, this is just like watching a show about an action figure. Because he never takes off his helmet, you don't know. And this is, kind of what you're saying, because I never see the character.
But the Mandalorian is supposed to be robotic. That's his character.
Is he?
And then once it goes along and, he likes the child more and he gets more relationships, that's when things change. But he starts out, he was raised to be robotic. So that's right, different.
But V is not robotic. I'm just saying that seeing the character's face to me is not necessary.
It's not just that I'm seeing the face.
For relating to them.
Every conversation in this game is walk from point A to point B. Your characters that you're talking to stand there, and you have the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, again, by the standards of the genre, I actually think they're fairly dynamic. But this goes back to what we said last time we talked about this, which is that this game it does exactly what I expected from the genre, including all of its inherent flaws that you're pointing out, but that are just kind of inherent to this format. So it does not overcome those weaknesses. It is really like any other video game of its kind.
And so, to me, I mean, like you said, it's just another open world game. So then the world, to me, should be the big centerpiece, right? I
love the world.
So can you name all the different districts and tell me what's different about them?
Oh, but I couldn't name the districts about any video game.
But they should feel different. Night City.
I mean, I know there's like
Night City is
like a
one
market
giant
area.
Nothing.
That's not true. There's like a corporate area. There's a market. There's kind of an outskirts that's kind of like the outskirts of LA. Like you've stepped into, no man's land or something.
What can you do in those areas?
You do the same things that you do in every other
area
part of the game, which is drive around, do quests, talk to people, collect things.
You do nothing.
Okay. I mean, I went out to those. I definitely went out to those areas over the course of doing stuff.
To me, it was just one of those things.
There's lots of stuff. There's a lot of activities in this game. I mean, there are a lot of quests. There are a lot of things to do.
That are all
There's a ton of content.
They're all the same. Go collect this vehicle. Go kill this bad guy. Go do this for the cops. It's all the same.
Oh, okay.
And this is me coming on. I relate this game to obviously Grand Theft Auto 5 a lot. And at least in Grand Theft Auto 5, there were so much. You could get lost on side stuff, whether it was go play golf or go to the strip club or go play this minigame or this minigame or that minigame or this minigame's over here. There's nothing. There's no minigame ever in this game. And then we just get off of playing Judgment, which that is a 4-block radius that has more heart and soul in it and more to do than all of Night City. To me, it was just, I really appreciate that CD Projekt Red decided to make this a smaller experience. For somebody like me that it doesn't like to put 100 hours in the games, I like to bounce around. I really appreciate that I could get this done in 20, 25 hours. But to be able to make it, that should give you more of the ability to make that world seem more alive. To me, there should be way more side stuff that you should be able to do. If you narrowed down your gameplay from going from the 60, 70 hours or whatever Witcher 3 is to a 20-hour experience, you should be able to fit so much more content that is completely side stuff and just stuff to enjoy that world. And instead, there's just nothing here. They took way more time in trying to add all of these little details, like screens actually show you something instead of just a generic static picture or whatever. And there's so much garbage on the floor that has all this detail in it. They spent all that time on all of this unnecessary stuff to make the world look real, that they forgot to add the realness to the world and actually have something to do. You have boxing. You have a couple boxing matches you can do as a side quest.
It really just sounds. How much did you explore the side stories?
A little bit. I finished all of Pan Am. I did most of Judy, and there was that one time where it would not. I had messaged you. I got completely stuck because is his name Horatio? Who's the Asian guy that you do the parade mission with? Takahata. I was completely throwing out a name, but yeah, I think that's right. Arasaka. Okay. So there was a point where he was like, I'll call you tomorrow. And I went days and days and days. I skipped days. I turned the game off, turned it on. He just would not trigger. And you had said I probably got stuck on a side quest that whatever. Yeah,
there's sometimes when there is an active quest that needs to be resolved before the game will trigger the phone events again. And you probably just you were just sitting there. This is just a problem. Again, we talked about this last time about how it's not really bugs. It's how they decided to script their event triggers.
But
that is the problem.
In saying that, I spent days and days just doing all sorts of side quests. And I cleaned out a couple different sections of that map of all question marks. So I was doing a lot. What's your favorite side quest? The Pan Am stuff.
That was not part of. That is not a companion quest.
None. They're all the same. Like there's a lot of. Okay. Oh, there's this. What are they called? Not freakers. They're called.
Okay. All right. I'll tell you about mine, and I'm hoping that you've played it because I think it's one that I told you that you should probably play. Did you deal with the mayor of the city who thought that his apartment was broken into?
That I did not do.
Okay. All right. Let me tell you about that quest. So one of the fixers, or I think maybe the cop. At any rate, somebody puts you in touch with the mayor and basically says the mayor had an incident where he thought he ran into a stranger in the middle of the night, and the security company in charge of his mansion has absolutely no record of it, denies that it ever happened, and the security footage shows nothing. So is he going crazy, or is there something to it? So that's where it starts. And that is very much a classic Witcher-style investigative mission where you show up, you have to walk around the mansion, you pick up clues, you hack computers, you go through surveillance footage, and you figure out what happened. And eventually you come to the conclusion that what has happened is actually that the same people who are in charge of the surveillance system are also meddling with this man's brain. That somebody, there's some kind of conspiracy to control this politician, and through the chip in his head, they are gradually rewriting his personality. And when you tell his wife, who is, hired you originally, what is going on, she decides that it'd be for the best of everyone if we just kept the lid on it and did nothing. But you have the option to tell him that somebody is messing with his brain and his memory and his personality, and that he's being manipulated. And then that will lead him down a rabbit hole where he's going to investigate it further after you're done. So stuff like that, it both builds the world because you are involved in, like, literally you're dealing with the upper echelon of power in this city. And there is there's a moral conundrum and a choice at the center of it. So those quests do exist. And you don't just do the same thing in every quest. Or like, there's a racing quest that happens pretty early on where some lady just says like, hey, you should come race with us. Come to this location. And you think it's just going to be some dumb, like, nothing race side content. And it's not, because after you do that race, it kicks off a whole other storyline that involves some of the major characters.
Yeah, I got that call and didn't do it because I'm like, I hate the car physics in this game.
That's exactly. I put it off for a long time because I was like, I hate driving in this game. Bad. I don't want to do a race. But the race is like a tiny part of that quest, and then it blossoms into a larger quest. That's good. So,
but
I think.
But my thing is, you still have not told me one thing that you can do in this game that's not a quest.
I mean, they're all quests. It's an RPG, but the stuff you do in the quests, it's got.
But you should have side stuff. If you want your world to feel lived in, there should be side stuff. At least The Witcher 3 had that card game.
We've not even talked about one of the core mechanics in this game is the kind of time, going through the recordings, going through the I forget whatever that system is that records everything you see, and then you can plug it into your brain and rewatch it.
I mean, that had to have been more of a side questy thing because I only did a couple of them.
The mind, a lot of people do them for. There's a whole side mission.
I figured there was something that I hadn't seen that was doing more of those.
Well, there's a whole side mission where you do one for pleasure, one of those mind trips, and that's the infamous one that actually has the that they had to change because it had the flickering lights.
Gotcha.
What's the thing?
Seizures.
Epileptic.
Seizures? Yeah.
The epileptic seizure-inducing stuff was in that one mind trip. But mostly you use it for investigative purposes. And, it's that whole thing where you've basically got a timeline that you can scrub through with multiple layers of detail. There's an audio layer, there's a visual layer, and then there's a heat layer that looks at heat signatures. And you're kind of toggling between them and trying to find answers. And you do that quite a bit in the side quests. Like, there are quite a few side quests that require investigative work, following a trace. Doing some hacking, analyzing some memories. There's a lot of that. I mean, it's not like all you do is go here and shoot people and collect things. Like, it's not Destiny. No. It's not activate this point and then defend it for 2 minutes. It's not giving you that like the super generic stuff that a lot of loot shooters give you. It's a proper RPG with each quest has a scripted story. With people that, with voice acting and I don't know what else you want. There's like, here's a 3 or 4 different.
I want goofy stuff to be able to do on the side.
Yeah, but what kind of goofy? I mean, the game basically has like a half a dozen core mechanics. It's got your shooting, your melee, your hacking, your adventure game kind of memory analysis parts, your dialogue trees. and those get just kind of like the ingredients in a recipe get slightly remixed in every quest, and sometimes one gameplay element will be dominant, and sometimes another gameplay element will be dominant, and that's your content.
Yeah, but again, this is far shrunk down from what The Witcher 3 is, and The Witcher 3 has a bunch of side stuff. I mean, I'm not saying you have to come up with a new card game like Gwent, but give me something. I mean, their whole thing with Cyberpunk 2077 are the things that you put in your head, right? So why can't we just have a side place that you go that will change, like some mini game that you put that in and then you see crazy stuff?
Oh, sure. It'd be nice to have a couple more mini games.
Yeah, that's what I want. Just give me something where I have to actually go explore the world other than see ? Go to ?
Yeah, but the question marks are where it's so weird that you're just like, well, there's no content, and I hate doing quests. No,
I'm just saying it's not. I'm not saying that there's no content. I'm saying that the world is boring. There's content, and there's lots of quests, and I have so many still left undone on my list. There's so much content that I'm getting 4 phone calls in between each mission to set up more content. I'm not saying there's no content in Cyberpunk. I'm just saying the world itself, Night City to me, is bland and boring. And it would have helped if there were things I would have to can go do. I'm not saying collectibles. I'm not saying...
Here's the thing with Night City. It's kind of like... I don't know if you've ever played the Mafia games. But Mafia 2 has this, where it's a beautifully rendered, detailed city. I mean, just amazing to look at, but barely anything to do in it. Mm-hmm. You've got... The city exists to drive from main quest marker to main quest marker in. And that is it. More so even than, L.A. Noire was kind of infamous for that as well, right? That the open world aspect of it was perfunctory and in fact was almost completely skippable. So I can understand that complaint. But just like in those games, I just loved existing in and looking at the city. Here, I just love existing in and looking at the city.
But to me...
It's all I'm saying.
I don't know what it was, but at least at night, Night City did not look good. And maybe it's because they had so much, like, ray tracing or whatever that effect is, where, like, I had so much glare off of stuff at night, which is fine, and that's the style that they were going for. But it was really disappointing, especially in those, like, 2 or 3 hours where I was doing nothing but side stuff and clearing out whole sections of the city where I'm like, I wish there was just more. I wish while I'm waiting for so-and-so to get a hold of me, whichever mission it would be, that, all right, I'm going to go play, I'm trying to even think of what would be cool in a cyberpunk setting. Like, not golf or anything like that. Like, the only thing I can think of is something in your head that would turn on something like Pokemon Go, but that's just a collectible thing, and I'm not saying they need that, but...
Oh, I don't want a photo mode with the I was so sick of that in Insomniac's infamous games.
But that's not like that's why I'm not a game creator. But it was just like it would be really cool to see what kind of concepts they came up with, like a little mini arcade or something like that. Or you have to go meet all these guys in alleys that'll create different of those experiences for you. It was just...
it sounds like you just want to be playing a different game to me.
I did not enjoy Cyberpunk. I'm sorry.
If you don't find what is the main kind of 5 or 6 things you do in the game to be enjoyable, and you're not invested in the story or characters, then I guess...
Yeah,
sure.
Again, and for anybody that out there that enjoys it, and it sounds like you enjoyed it more than me, that's totally cool. I'm not going to sit here and say Cyberpunk's a terrible game. It's just, I have said for my entire many years that I have worked on W2M or worked with Sean Garmer in general and the other places that we've been at, open world games are not my thing. And that's totally cool, and it's totally fine. It's just this game... I went in going, okay, this is promising to change the landscape of open world games and be this big dynamic thing. And everyone that loves open worlds is saying, this is the one you have to play. And I played it and went, I've played it before.
I will admit that it does feel like, A, it feels like something you've played before, absolutely. And B, it feels like a game that had a significant chunk of content cut.
It's possible.
So, both of that are undeniable. And, I still think that what's there is pretty darn good.
When it works.
And
So
a lot of that, when it works, I think the shooting's pretty darn good. And I enjoyed the characters and the story, which we should talk about. So previously on Cyberpunk, you went to do a heist with your best friend Jackie, breaking into the headquarters of a Yakuza organization. And while you were in the process of trying to steal a strange microchip artifact kind of thing that is of some significance to this organization, you witnessed the murder of its patriarch by the power-hungry son, who stabs him and then, of course, scapegoats you for the murder, conveniently, since you happen to be in the building trying to do this theft. And during the theft, Jackie gets killed. He gets a nice sad burial. And in order to save the chip from being corrupted, you plug it into your brain and download Keanu Reeves, Johnny Silverhand, into your brain. And now you're stuck with him, and he is slowly usurping your mind, taking over. The nanomachines are rewriting your brain to turn you into Johnny, and you've got to put a stop to it. So now you're going from ally to ally, trying to figure out what you can do to save your brain. And this is why I'll give it to Randy to talk about some story stuff, because he's got a more recent exposure.
And I've forgotten all of it. As far as the main story goes, from the point that you just got to, the rest of it is you going around trying to meet people to get Johnny out of your head. To me, the main story gets so boring from here on out. It's the side stuff with Jill and Pan Am that I had way more fun with than I did with the main story. And I don't know. Maybe it's just because I didn't meet anyone interesting. The AI thing that you meet, I'm blanking on that name. That was interesting at first. Maybe because she's just as robotic as I felt that some of the other characters were. And at least she was playing it up. But I don't know. You have one really with Arasaka, right? He's the guy we were just talking about. There was one scene with him that actually made me chuckle. And it was either right before or right after the parade battle where he tries to eat something and it doesn't agree with him and he pukes over the side and says something about the person he puked on or whatever. And it's like, all right, that was clever. That was funny. Thank you, Cyberpunk. But the rest of it, it was just you go outside the city trying to find one tech guy that knows stuff, and he's like, nope, I don't know this stuff. So now you have to go meet his
Alt.
Well, it's not Alt.
You do meet
Alt's the one, but
Alt
I'm thinking
it's
the main villain's sister that you then have to go meet.
Oh, good lord!
And that scene was there, and then after that, it's you set up for the final showdown when you try to go into the basement of that place.
That's much. So the sister, the other head of the Yakuza. That's towards the end when you meet her.
Yeah, but there's not much in between. Right.
First you meet Rogue, and you meet Arasaka, and then you meet Alt. And with Arasaka, you've got that mission where you have to he helps you get through that festival and along the rooftops and dealing with those snipers and all that stuff. At the end of that whole quest line, there is a point where it seemed to me the prudent thing to do was to throw Arasaka to the wolves, where it really felt like I couldn't help him, and I made the pragmatic decision to leave him behind. And that apparently basically locked me out of one of the endings. So I have to do an all-new playthrough if I want to get the all endings achievement. And that was tragic. I don't know how that went for you. I don't know if Arasaka lived in your game.
He did.
So what did you do and what happens? I'm curious about this.
I don't remember. We just escape, I think.
Okay, so it's just not a problem, because it really seems like you'd have to give something. You're gonna really lose something if you don't go back for
God,
it.
I can't even remember. Hold on.
They make it seem like a high cost trade off.
To look at the mission list again and see if I can rack my brain.
Anyway, so I screwed that up and let him die because I'm a dummy. Apparently, I could have just saved him with no consequences.
Yeah, there wasn't much. There wasn't anything that I jumped out at.
Yeah. And then Rogue is Johnny's former girlfriend, but his real former girlfriend from before is Alt. And we are first introduced to Alt in a flashback sex scene that is outrageous.
Terrible.
That's we're about to blow up this building. Let's have sex in like 9 different positions, one after another. Do all these crazy drugs. It's all about like establishing the rock star nature of him, I guess, and his relationship to Alt. And of course, that sex scene is right before they have a big, sparking breakup. They have a big breakup scene, but then now they're broken up. Let's blow up this building. And then Alt dies. Alt becomes digitized. It's the same way that Johnny became digitized. But she is just trapped in cyberspace. And she really is the all-knowing, motherly AI that theoretically, that you think can save you. And this is the thing I've been excited to talk to you about for so long. And I'm afraid that I'm not going to get anything out of you because you're already talking about how you don't remember things. Oy vey.
By the way, I don't think this Arasaka guy is the person we're thinking of. Arasaka is the whole tower. It's the Arasaka family.
The Arasaka family. So what's the guy?
I'm trying to find it. I feel so bad for anyone that likes this game.
we did not make a list of all the characters this time. Tanaka? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Your Japanese friend. He was a bodyguard for Arasaka, and then after he was trying to actually solve Arasaka's murder, and that got him thrown out. Anyway.
I'm going to find it. Keep going. I'll see if I remember what you're talking about.
All right. The thing I want to get your thoughts on is Alt explains to you that the only way that she can save you is by essentially making a backup of your consciousness.
Yes.
And then writing back over Johnny's consciousness using the nanomachines. Okay? So, the way I understood this and the way that I think Takamura. Okay. Yes, Takamura's death. We'll get back to Takamura's death. I'm in the middle of this new thought now. Okay. It's pretty clear, and the way she explains it, it is still a death of consciousness. Like, this is basically, I'm still going to wipe your brain. You are still dead. But now, a duplicate of you is living in your brain. So, your original consciousness still gets overwritten with an AI duplicate of your consciousness.
Uh-huh.
So the result will be that you will be indistinguishable from your former self to anyone who is not you, right?
Correct.
To an outsider, to an external observer, you are still you. However, you are no longer you. You are an AI replica of you. So it's kind of like the question of the teleporter in Star Trek, of when the teleporter puts you back together, are you still alive? Or something like I don't know if you've ever seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger clone movie, The Sixth Day.
I have not.
Where the villain's idea of immortality is just that he keeps cloning himself and downloading his consciousness. But the problem is that the clone of yourself is still actually a different person. Like, yes, just because there is an exact duplicate of me who looks and thinks like me exactly walking around, that does not make my death not a death. To me, I'm still dead. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So this is why the solution in this game is not really a solution.
Well, it's not it's not a perfect solution, but
no, but you can't really save. It is not. You cannot transfer your consciousness. There is no continuity of consciousness. You are still dead. There is just now a new you living in your body.
That new you
are still gone.
That new you will never know.
The new you will never know the difference, but you cannot actually save yourself.
That's fine. I mean, we saw that in Binary Domain. It's good.
Is it fine?
Until Cyberpunk 2078, when she then takes back over that subconscious and makes you do more shit.
If the whole point... I just feel like this is a true conundrum where this is not actually... Like, you might as well just be dead. Like, who cares about the next person in my body, even if he's exactly like me?
So is that what you did?
It's not me.
Did you give your body to Johnny?
I mean, I did 3 endings. I did 3 different endings.
I want to know your true ending, not when you went back and did other shit.
Okay, the true ending, the one that I chose, is the one where I went with that option. because I wanted to see what would happen and how it would play out. It was the most interesting one to me.
And
I still feel like it is not a good...
you copying yourself. Is that what you're saying?
You were basically... Johnny, there's a branch where one of you is going to enter the internet and become an AI ghost to live alongside Art. And it just seemed to make way more sense for Johnny to do that. Yeah. So Johnny and Art could be back together. I did the same thing. Or it could be one, which it'll still play out differently for you, or it still did, because you've got a different love interest. So for me, the ending that I got was, okay, she basically copies my consciousness into the body, but it's even worse. It is even worse than what I had assumed the premise was. Not only are you now an AI duplicate of yourself, but also you only exist for 6 months. The AI override is not permanent, and eventually your body is going to reject your original consciousness. So that now makes you, someone who's you're basically a terminally ill person with 6 months to live, and you get to go out into the desert with the family of nomads that you made. Or, I was originally a nomad, so it was a natural fit for me. But I think regardless of your origin, you can make a life with that nomad tribe and with Pan Am. But, I was not with Pan Am. I was with Judy, who has my favorite of the companion quest lines that we still need to talk about. But it's basically, kind of you and Judy together at the end. And then there is a moment where Judy goes to bed, and you're sitting on the tank, and you're looking at your little, what do you call that? A dream catcher or something? Yeah. Your amulet.
It has the bullet that went into your head. Yep.
Right. And it's your old tribe symbol, but it also has that bullet enshrined in it in steel, like a steel wire or something to
So are you
tie it down?
Okay, I'm going to lose my mind.
And you throw it away.
Oh, you throw it away.
Yeah.
I forget if I threw mine away.
Yeah.
I'm blanking now. But are you fucking telling me all of these fucking choices and all that matters is who you're with at the end? I had the exact same
ending.
Scene.
Okay, so you did the same ending I did, though. But the other ending is quite... So there are 2 other endings that I saw. One of them is one where you don't get with anybody, you don't join the nomads, but you become the Legend of Night City. And becoming the Legend of Night City, this is now you're living out in the last 6 months that you have. You do actually accomplish great things to the point where your final gig, the gig on which the game ends, is you are in space, in a spacesuit, pulling out your gun, about to attack some giant space station orbiting Earth by yourself.
Stop it.
And it's like the most Saints Row ending.
So, but from what I'm understanding, there are 5 different endings, 5 sections, because obviously there's a different one if you're Johnny or if you're V at the end, I would assume.
And then if you're Johnny, you can be reunited. Yeah,
but all of those endings are only dependent on one of your last choices. This is why I hate games that say it's all about choice. None of your other fucking choices matter then.
Okay, so the only choice that matters is whether or not Japanese bodyguard lives. That's the only choice that does not happen towards...
or who you ask to help. And...
That's okay, sure. Yes, you've got to do all the side quests in order to be able to call on the nomads or call on your other allies. Right. There's like one other ally group, I think, that I didn't deal with. But yes, if you want all of your options open, you want to do all of your side content, then really, if Bodyguard lived, then you make all of your decisions in the last couple hours of the game. Like just before you go for the final mission, the way that various conversations with Johnny play out, whether or not you let Johnny and Rogue go. And then there's like a secret ending where you decide to not pursue this at all, and you can send Johnny off alone and nobody else has to die, which I didn't see.
I was looking at and I don't think at the endings, and there's one you could off yourself. And I kind of wish for that one, I wish I would have went...
So offing yourself is the bad ending that doesn't even give you a trophy or an achievement.
That's cool, but I kind of wanted that one because the final missions are the most buggy thing I've played in the game.
Okay, well we'll get to that. But so yeah, okay, so you can kill yourself, which is the bad ending. You can just have Johnny go, which requires having a fantastically good relationship with him, and requires you to basically let a conversation play out that is not like, it's an unintuitive thing to do. It's kind of a secret ending that like you have to do just the right thing for it to happen. And then the rest of it is really whether or not you send Johnny and Rogue off, or whether you go yourself, and whether or not you let Johnny go off into the internet to be with Art and take over your body, or whether or not you let Johnny take over your body and you go into the internet. So there is quite a bit of variance. And then within those endings, do get...
Stop that there's variance.
Within those endings, you do get the ending of whoever you romance. So if you've got a romance option with you, they'll be in the ending with you.
But it's the exact same scene, just with a different love interest.
Right. So it's a little bit more variation than Deus Ex Human Revolution had.
The variation all matters basically on one section where you choose at the end. That's not a choose your own adventure game. That is it's not like they make you pick, which again, most of them aren't options. They're just blues so you can get more details, are bullshit and pointless.
But to be fair, the other decisions that you make do affect the outcomes of those quest lines. So, whether or not whether or not all the prostitutes die in Judy's brothel, whether or not Judy it's kind of a trade-off, right? You either lose the brothel or you lose your friends in that quest line. Or, the quest line of the politician kind of has a vastly different outcome depending on what you choose. So it just doesn't tie into the final... It doesn't tie into the very ending, but not every decision, not every outcome has to tie into the final outcome, in my opinion.
But at least she should have effect a little bit.
I mean, I could see that you might want more, or you could do something like...
I'm just frustrated that you and I, on our first playthroughs, got the exact same ending, the exact same scene, just with a different love interest.
Okay, but, all right, Persona 5, or if you ever finish a Persona game, or at least the last two, what Persona does is it will acknowledge all of your other side stories by having those characters have a little cameo at the end. So, there's the point where all of humanity has to come together against the big bad in some way, and you see it's almost doing like the... at the end of Star Wars, cutting across everybody celebrating the end of the Empire kind of thing, where it cuts to everyone. Every important character you interacted with over the game has a little moment where you see how they contribute and how what you did was important for them. So I guess you could have done something like that. But other than doing something like that, you can't expect every little choice along the way to figure into the ending. But I can understand that, you're annoyed about that.
Well, I'm more annoyed that there are 5 endings and 2 of them are the exact same, apparently.
What do you mean? 2 of them are the exact same?
That's the same ending? There's just a different love interest?
We got a variation of the same ending.
Okay, I thought you were saying that there are 5 endings, and you got one and I got one, and they were the same, but one's Judy and one's Pan Am. If it's the exact same... and it's just a different girl, then I take back... No. I take that back.
We just happened to get the same... We got the same ending, but with a slight variation.
Okay, and then I'm far more happy with that. I want the small variations. Okay. I just thought we were doing different endings that...
Okay, so there's the ending where you kill yourself, the ending where you go to space, the ending where Johnny takes over your body, and then there's a thing where you see... It's supposed to be a touching moment. I did not like that ending at all. That is an ending where it flashes forward into the future, and you see Johnny kind of as an older guy inspiring the next generation of rocker boys. He goes to a music shop, and he plays a riff, and the guy's like, "You're so cool." And he buys him a guitar, or he gives him his old guitar. And it's all about how Johnny passes on the legacy.
Gotcha. Okay, so...
And becomes an inspiration to the next generation.
That understanding, then.
And so that's 3. And then there's one ending, which is a variation of the one where Johnny and Rogue goes, where Johnny just goes himself. And I actually do not know how exactly that plays out, because I've not seen it. Gotcha. But I'm assuming that it's also in a notable way different. And then kind of the variant, one variant is whether or not... Oh yeah, I guess the other one is just instead of sending Johnny and Rogue, you ask Panam, which is what we did. We both asked Panam on our first playthrough to help us, which you don't have to at all. So there's your ending. So there's quite a bit of, there's, at least 4 distinct endings, and then one ending that's slightly different. And then within those 4 distinct endings, there is a variation of what, are you with one of these? I think there are 4 different love interests. And it really depends on your gender as well, because there's a purely male-on-male gay love interest, I think. And then Judy is a purely female-on-female. So you could not have romanced Judy as a man.
That's okay. Go
Just
Pan
like
Am.
I could not romance. Just like I could not
But
romance
the Pan Am love scene was awkward and weird. Dude, it was almost as strange as the first sex scene you were talking about. Not that I'm playing video games to look for a good sex scene, but it was just a drug-tripped weird thing.
I mean, I was obviously one of the things that attracted me to this game was to see what the sex scenes would be like. I mean,
can we just really quick talk about why does Pan Am always wear a onesie?
Oh, personal style.
Just always made me laugh.
Because it's practical. It's like isn't that like a mechanics? That's just so you don't get
not overalls.
your
Those
good
are
clothes
overalls. I'm talking about like a baby's onesie that snaps underneath the crotch, and then she puts her clothes on over it. You just always see it.
Okay, I don't know. Well, I actually think the lesbian love scene with Judy was a good love scene. Like it was not awkward. I don't know. Maybe it's just the.
Well, you have to watch the Pan Am one. It's a drug trip
the thrusting
thing.
that
they do something, and it's just weird.
Maybe it's the thrusting.
It's not even that.
Problem.
It's just the way things get cut, and they sink into the tank, and it ups their feeling or whatever, and it's just weird colors and.
Now there's never a close up, right?
No.
There's no penetration.
No, of course not.
You don't really see. Well, you say, of course not, but they're having you select a penis,
That's true.
select from one of these, penis variants, and then, I guess you could theoretically just see it. So you only ever see that in the character screen, right?
You pick a character, you pick a penis, and the only time you see it is when it pops to your clothes. Apparently.
Okay. So,
but maybe honestly, it might be different too because I turned genitalia off. So maybe I missed part of that scene because I didn't want.
So you don't even know.
I didn't want my dick popping through my clothes all the damn time. So I just turned genitalia off.
I do.
So maybe I'm missing part of the sex scene.
I do know that Pan Am makes fun of you for being circumcised if you choose to circumcise penis because people have complained about it online. I think it's brilliant. It makes me laugh just thinking about it.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about before I talk about my ending issues?
Well, I mean, I guess what I was getting at was just considering how they marketed the game. I was a little disappointed that the sex stuff did not figure into it more.
Yeah, I guess.
Because you'd think, video games have done it before. Rockstar did it with the Ballad of Gay Tony. I think that might have been the first digital wiener. But to make such a big deal about a digital wiener and then not really having
not
enough
going
figured
all
into the
way
game.
with it.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll shut up about it now. I'm just saying, this game definitely overpromised in a great many departments.
I think we can agree there.
So talk about your issues with the ending, please, sir.
I have to say, I've been playing this on the Xbox Series X, and I know you tried it on the Xbox One at one point and said it was garbage, right?
I did. It was sub 20 frames. In bigger shootouts, like when there were a lot of people on screen, it would go into 15 to 20 frames per second, which is not great.
And obviously
it did crash several times just in the 2 hours or so that I played it.
And of course the PC is playing it better, so I'm playing it on that middle tier. And when it first came out before the first patch, we both talked about it. There were a lot of bugs and a lot of issues. But I have to say, for the most part, it's been pretty smooth. As far as glitches and issues go, other than trying to reload to try to get that mission to go, but that's fine. It's whatever. But then I got to that final mission, and it became nearly impossible to finish this game. I'd sent a screenshot to Jens that you're supposed to meet this guy to start the final mission, and my waypoint was at what looked like a meeting area, and he wasn't there. And I walked all around, couldn't find him. So I reloaded it, and then all of a sudden my waypoint sent me to the other side of the camp to where he was actually waiting for you. and I could continue it on. And then you get into that little base before you get into the tunnel, and you take over the base, and then they send those waves of enemies at you. And every single wave I had to do twice, because the first and third times I had an enemy just go through the floor at some point, because I would have 9 of 10 killed, and I sent you a video, which was kind of tough to see.
Yeah, that sucks.
But a little red triangle that's always over their head, just fluttering around under the ground. And then the second time, and I wish I would have recorded this, but I didn't think about it, and obviously didn't expect it. But I think it's the second wave. They come in through like a ship, right? Like a little plane, a hover plane, and they shoot some stuff. Well, the second time I was looking up because I knew where I was coming, and the ship goes and stops, and all of a sudden 6 soldiers pop up above the ship. And then they're like, here they come. And they drop these guys, and they land on the ship that's still there because they were supposed to be in the ship and drop. And then the ship took off, and not all of them got off the ship. It just took off with the people I had to kill. So I had to reload there, and then again, I had another one in the ground. It was like so many glitches at the end of just like, what the hell? Maybe they just haven't got to that point of the game of fixing this stuff, but I had none of that issues. I had no people spawning in crates or stuff that you've seen, or characters falling through stuff, and all of a sudden it was just that final mission that it was just, I restarted that game 5 times in the last hour and a half, 2 hours. And I only restarted it once ever other than day one, and that was only because I was trying to figure out how to get that one quest to go. So it was not a good way for me to end that game.
I have not had anything happen in the last act of that game, and I've played that last act 3 times.
So again, it was one of those weird things that'll happen, but
yeah,
but it was just it was not a. I was set to finish it all yesterday, and then I did so many parts of that one mission multiple times. I'm like, I'll finish it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about what happens though in the ending that we both got. Let's talk about how the story is resolved.
You run off with the girl. Or at least what I did.
Yes.
I joined the Nomads, and we pushed through the fence, which.
Yep.
Once again,
you attack the
Cyberpunk
headquarters,
making fun of Donald Trump, showing that walls don't matter, and they go underneath the. Sorry, they go underneath, and off you go, and then you have a little chat in the tank, and then you go out, and like you said, you look at your bullet, and that was it. And then I got credits for 30 minutes.
Well, I will agree with one thing you said earlier, which is you really like that one moment where you see your character.
Yes, that scene.
My 2 favorite moments in this whole game are in in both the Become the Legend of Night City ending and in the Nomad ending. Both of those endings have kind of big moments where it just shows your character front and center, and you get a really nice close look at the face you made. And I really like that as somebody who likes creative characters and who put a lot of effort into making an attractive protagonist. I really enjoyed those couple of moments when you actually see yourself, like in a cutscene context. So that's what I like most about those ending cutscenes. Is when you see. Just
imagine if it was the whole game.
I mean, I don't need it. It'd be cool if it was if it was first person in combat and then in cutscenes third person.
I did. I'm not saying this needed to be a third person game, but just in at least sometimes. I'm not saying every dialogue had to have a third person cutscene in it. I get having normal conversation in first person, but in those bigger moments, like having a full on cutscene during Jackie's funeral would have been so much better than robotically walking around. To me.
But don't you like in the story that like all these downtrodden elements, that nomad tribe and the prostitutes and the ex-criminals and, all of your friends, like everybody comes together for that one big assault on the headquarters, and you bring down the guy.
Did everybody show up? I only had the nomads show up.
Oh, you only had the nomads show up?
But I also didn't finish those other storylines. I only got part way through those.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you have kind of that big moment where everyone comes together, and you deal with the bad guy who murdered his dad, and
I'm just curious. Maybe it's because I didn't do other side missions. Do we ever see that guy again?
So okay, when you have the You had bodyguard guy alive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you have bodyguard guy alive, doesn't he not confront? Does he not confront the
he
villain?
never confronted the villain at all. But he wasn't with me at the end.
Oh, so that's his end. So you can do an ending with him where he takes revenge.
Gotcha.
Where he gets to take his revenge. So that's the ending I'm missing.
Gotcha.
That's the Okay, now it's all coming. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So if you keep him alive, then he's one of your options, apparently.
He was one.
So
I could pick him, or I could pick the Nomads, and I went. The Nomads sound like a bigger force.
I wish you'd picked him because then you could tell me what happens.
Something happens. That'll be your playthrough when you go back to it when the next gen.
I know, but I have to start from the beginning. I don't have a save where he's alive.
You wanted to, anyways. It's going to be next gen.
I know it'll be the next. Oh yeah, next gen Cyberpunk. Yep. It would just be good it would be good content for this podcast if we could talk about it. But
yeah, I mean, well, we have the beginning section that you can talk about it. But I won't be touching this game again.
You know what? When I play through it again in a year from now, when we talk about it again, I will give you an update on.
I will be ready.
The other endings.
All right.
Because I'll be sure to get that. I'll be sure to get that all endings achievement. That's kind of one of the things I want to get. Usually with these kinds of games, I want to see everything, at least as far as the story. But sounds like you did not care for the story.
Yeah, it was okay.
And you did not care for the gameplay. So I do not have high hopes for what your number is going to be.
My number was going to be higher than it sounds like it was going to be. Because, again, just because it wasn't my kind of game doesn't mean I'm going to come out here and just ream the game. Because some things just don't click. I'm not going to say this is a terrible game just because I didn't enjoy it. So I was all set to give it an 8. The ending glitches made me remember how broken this game is, so I'm giving it a 7. It's a generic open-world game with issues. So I think 7 is fair.
I am going to go with a 7.5.
See, I'm not even as low as you thought.
It just wouldn't seem right to give it a higher score in its current state.
That is true.
I do think this game could be an 8.5 or a 9 when it's done.
Yeah. I mean, again, I would have given it an 8 if it didn't have so many issues.
Yeah, so I'm going to give it a 7.5. It's still towards the bottom of my top 10 of the year. Even though I've scored other games higher, I know that doesns make sense.
Scoring is so arbitrary anyways. Like right now we've done 6 games for this podcast. Technically, Cyberpunk is now tied for my lowest score with The Evil Within. I think Cyberpunk is a better game than The Evil Within, but they have the same score.
Yeah. You know, The Evil Within, I'm still just shocked by how badly that game ran, considering that they had so much time to fix it up.
I agree. All right.
Anyway.
So that is it for Cyberpunk, and now we're going on to an indie darling that I've heard so much about. Have you ever played it?
I have played the first dungeon.
What?
I played ahead. You were.
Well, I meant before we picked it for the podcast. Okay.
No, in fact, I would never have played this. I had absolutely no interest in playing this. It's not my kind of game, as you like to say. You're basically. It's one. I even considered do I use one of my vetoes?
And you could, because it's not even one of mine. It's been there for so long, and I have a buddy that just absolutely loves it. And this one has a lot more options of whether you do this or that. I'm sure it'll come down to 2 or 3 endings again anyways, but we are playing Undertale, and I'll be curious to see how we play it and how that goes through. I'm just going to say it right now. Do we just say that's a 1 episode thing?
I don't know.
Because the How Long to Beat says 7 hours. We both seem to be about an hour in already. We'll just play it by ear right now?
I think so. I think it depends on whether or not we get stuck at any point, which could absolutely happen. I am playing the game in a certain way. Let's put it that way. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. This is probably one that if you haven't played it, you might want to play along. I definitely will say that I'm enjoying it, and I would, with reservations, recommend it to people if you're on the fence.
Awesome. So, one, maybe...
But I'm playing it... My point is, I'm playing it in a way where I'm not certain that I'll be able to complete it. And there may be a point where I have to start...
Right now, I think we're playing the same way.
There may be a point where I have to start
We'll talk about it after the show, but I think we're playing the same way right now. But only because...
So I can't...
We'll say 2 parts for now, because I kind of want to go back and play it a different way if I end up enjoying the game.
That's another reason why it might be that we beat it once and we do an episode and then we say, let's beat it one more time and do another episode.
That might be a bit thing.
It just all depends, I think, on where we stand. So,
but for no matter what, next episode for Chapter Select.
For now, just play it your own way, and we'll tell you at the beginning of the next episode whether you should have finished it.
So we'll be playing Undertale. Join us with that. Obviously, if you like movies based on video games, we are going through the Resident Evil series. Next week, we do Resident Evil Extinction. So we'll be halfway through the Resident Evil movie series. So we got lots coming up. We're already, by the time that one comes out, we're almost through the entire month of January already. This is getting crazy. Do we even come back? Is Undertale January or February? It is the end of January. Okay. So we're not quite through the first month yet, but
almost.
And then after we get through Undertale, it will be Yen's pick, and I'm sure I will get 50 more messages from Jens picking different games because he's having fun.
I keep looking at, what about this? What about this? What about this?
Well,
there's so many options.
Soon you will have to pick, and you will find it out right here on Chapter Select. So that's Jens. I'm Randy, and we will see you guys on the next chapter.
Till then.